right, everybody. Welcome back. This is of Stone and Clay, episode 84. We are here with the beautiful Bree Stauss. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Bree is a wonderful musician. You were on The Bachelor, Listen to Your Heart. And we've known each other. I think we've technically known each other for a while, but we met for the first time, I think, 6 months ago or something like that.
Yeah. In person.
Yeah. But thanks so much for being on the show. When did you initially get into music? Have you always been into music? Were you raised in a musical family? When did the kind of creative juices start flowing in you?
Honestly, my earliest memories are when I was really little and I would carry around a tape recorder outside, like running in the grass and just singing like these really dramatic songs.
Yeah.
I tried to find them.
You still do that though, right?
I actually do. Yeah. Not a lot's changed. Only now it's an iPhone instead of like this hilarious recorder. I don't even know really what it was. But yeah, I would those are my earliest memories. And then I would sing in church, at school, baptisms, weddings, things like that. And I didn't think I could really go into music because it's not super traditional.
Yeah.
I just went the school route, even though it was very challenging because in the back of my mind, I always wanted to do music.
Yeah.
And so I got my associate's EVU and then I transferred to BYU, and it was just really hard. And I was like, what am I doing? I want to be doing music. And I talked to a friend and she said, don't have a plan B. Mm-hmm. And that kind of just changed everything. I was like, you're right. Why am I working so hard for plan A when I don't even want it? Like I want plan B, you know? Right. So anyway, I decided to just stop schooling and just really heavily pursue music. And I haven't really looked back ever since.
Yeah, that's great. How young were you when you started like writing songs?
I would say high school.
Oh, cool. Mm-hmm. What would you say, like the majority of your songs, do you feel like they're usually about like heartache or just whatever you're going through or relationships? Do you feel like there's a general thread?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I have to force myself to write happy songs, and that's just the reality of it. I feel like a lot of songwriters are like that anyway. Yeah. It's kind of my way of journaling and processing, and I feel very deeply, and so a lot of my lyrics I kind of have to craft after the fact to make them sound not as
dark.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I can't help it. It's just how I feel and process, but I was trying to make it a little lighter.
A lot of times those really dark ones, I feel like, are the ones people connect with the most.
Yeah, it's true.
Because a lot of people have darkness within them, but they don't have a creative space to like get it out to the public or express it. And so when they hear those, they're like, oh, that's what I'm feeling. I've never been able to articulate it that way.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So tell me about your catalog of work. You have, I looked it up. It looks like you mostly just have singles, right? Do you have an album you're working on? Do you have an EP that's coming out? What do we got cooking?
Yes, I am working on an album finally, because I just feel like I got started a little late in music, at least in my mind. I was mid-20s, and I think society and the music industry does kind of tell you you're too late if you didn't start when you were like 12 or 15 or whatever. And so, I'm working on an album and I'm really excited for that. And I started pulling together all of my lyrics and I already have like 30 pages. I just have so much. And it's kind of fun with this one. I started with song titles. So I put them all together and it's all outlined and I know what I want to cover and make sure it's balanced with a little happy, a little sad. Obviously relationships are just, it could be 400 songs about that. So I'm really excited about the album.
Yeah, that's awesome. Who were your like all-time favorite artists.
Before it was cool, Taylor freaking Swift.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, it's amazing. She's blown up in the way that she deserves, but I was listening to her in high school with her country album, and she's only about 2 years older than me. So
Right.
I've literally grown up with every album, and it's been, I don't know what I would do without her.
Yeah.
I saw something online that said, "This is my therapist," and it showed Taylor Swift. And
Yeah.
I'm like, amen. Because, oh my gosh. And another person was like, imagine how, like, we're so lucky to be in the time of Taylor Swift, you know?
It's true. You know what? So I'm a Swiftie as well.
Yay.
Okay. I'm just going to say it for the
All right,
public to
good.
hear.
That's what I needed to hear.
The thing about Taylor that makes her so special among a myriad of things is how prolific she is.
Yeah.
Like, she just pumps out albums,
Mm-hmm.
but these are albums with like 10 hits per album,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's honestly really inspiring as an artist, because you're like, okay, Taylor's like touring 300 days a year and she drops a double album.
Yeah.
Like, it just shows like how hard she works and how she's constantly like, everything that's happening in her life seems to become a song, you know? And I love that from an artist perspective, like just using every ounce of your life to put out art,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And it's like, why not?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. What's the point of holding anything back or keeping songs in?
Yeah.
Like we were talking about before we started, how you have this new song out, Heaven, and you said you've kind of been holding it for a long time. How long have you been holding it?
Like 7 years.
So you wrote it 7 years ago?
Yes. So I wrote most of it 7 years ago, just playing around in the studio, and I just ad-libbed like almost the whole thing. And I was like, whoa, where did this come from?
It just kind of fell out of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But because the meaning is complex and raw, and very personal to me, I really held on to it. And I'm like, no one wants to hear this. This is too, all the things.
Too dark, like we talked about before.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll just focus on my breakup songs and,
Yeah.
be good with that. But it's just been gnawing at me like every year. And then this last year specifically, it's almost felt more like a prompting, like just something higher that's been like, you got to get this out. And so it's been more of a spiritual journey for me, which is awesome, because I feel like that's what I want my music to be. I want it to be for people. I want them to feel and to feel like they're not alone. And I think that the best way to communicate is through music.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy that it's out now.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about this song. It's called Heaven. What was sort of the impetus for writing it? You said like you're in the studio and it kind of just fell out of you. So obviously you were probably feeling a lot at the time.
Yeah. So the studio is where I feel like the best. I feel like I'm me, and I can do, say, sing, feel whatever I want. And it's just one of my favorite places to be. But I did have an experience with sexual abuse, and that's caused a lot of depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
And I think it was just putting it into words was very freeing for me. I felt like I was gaining my power back, because as a victim, you're powerless, your control's taken away, you don't have a voice. And so...
Had you talked about it much with like people you're close with?
I did a lot of therapy and talked to a lot of family, but as far as like the song itself, no. Is that what you mean?
I mean just the incident.
Yeah.
It was something you talked with family and
Yes.
therapy about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I think that there's no other way to truly get through something like that. because when you keep it in, it messes with you so much.
Yeah.
And I kept it in for 7 years, which is kind of funny that it took me 7 years to release it. And I think that's when a lot of the damage was done.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to process this by myself, and you just need support, whatever that means for you, you know?
Yeah, because it's such a, like, how could you know how to deal with those complex feelings? Like, there's nothing in life that really prepares you for something so traumatic.
Right.
You know? Why do you think, because I've heard this a lot, like people that go through sexual abuse, there's a feeling of depression and shame. And why do you think those feelings come when you're the victim?
I think there's a lot to that, and I think it also depends on like when it happens, whether you're a child or in high school or an adult. You have the same feelings, but depending on where your brain's at with, you know, how far it's developed, I think has a lot to do with it. But I think just instantly, because it's something that's, you know, is wrong, you just feel like you've done something wrong because you've taken part in it. Even if you know, had it done to you and you didn't have a part in it, you still feel like you had a part in it because you were part of the equation.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so, and yeah, I think it's just that it's wrong. And so you just feel like, ugh.
Yeah.
You know? And like, if I wasn't there at this time, would it have happened? Or if there's just so many things that go into it that just messes with your thought process.
What do you think's the best thing you kind of gleaned from therapy in that process? The best advice?
That it wasn't my fault. That was huge.
Did that take a while to really sink in?
Yes.
Even though I'm sure that's day one.
Yeah. Yeah. I still, like, I've done so much therapy, but it never fully goes away.
Yeah.
You know, and certain things trigger things that just are like, you feel like you're good, and then something happens or is brought up and you're like, whoa, why am I feeling this way? Like, I've worked past this. But I think that's another big thing is I've learned that it doesn't matter how old you get or how much therapy you've had. Sometimes you're going to be triggered and it's going to take you back to certain things and you have to work through it again. And I kind of thought that once you worked through it, you're good.
Right.
And I don't want that to sound negative. I want it to sound hopeful that, you know, that's just life. You just have to keep going.
Yeah.
You know?
I think sometimes we beat ourselves up because, like you said, you're like, I should be over this.
Yeah.
I should be through this. But like, even sometimes with the breakup, like it's been a year or so and you're like, I'm actually in a good place now.
Yeah.
But yeah, then you hear a song or you drive past some place where you were together and you're like, oh, now I'm back in the poorhouse.
Yeah.
But then you kind of spiral because you're like, what is my problem? Like, why can't I get over this person? They're probably so over me.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Yep.
And then, you're kind of calling yourself stupid and you feel embarrassed.
Yeah. I was going to say, it really doesn't matter what it is. You automatically blame yourself. That's just like human nature, you know? And the self-talk just gets very negative. Just because you're feeling an emotion, you know? But I think once you validate the emotion and you're like, this is what I'm feeling and it's okay to like cry about it or yell about it, it gets better, you know, because you're not just trying to shove it away and hide it, because feelings are meant to be felt.
Right. Yeah, totally. So what would be Bree's advice for a younger girl that has maybe recently been through some abuse and is like, I don't know where to go from here. I don't think I can tell my family. I'm not ready to go talk to some stranger about this. Like, what's your advice to someone like that?
It's hard if you don't feel like you have anyone to talk to. And as hard as it is to just talk to a stranger, I think if you can't talk to your family or a close friend, that's first for me, is talking to family or a friend, because they do know you. But if you don't have that, then I would seek out professional help from a therapist. And sometimes it takes a little bit to find the right one. I've been through several and I'm like, oh, I don't feel like we connect. But just just setting that initial appointment up is so hard. But once you do it and see someone, it's life-changing.
Yeah.
Because, again, you're pulled out of your own head. You get perspective, and it's just so important to talk about it.
Yeah. Is that in like dating, do you feel like that's something that should be brought up if you've been through abuse? Do you feel like it should be brought up early, or do you feel like it's none of their business, or do you feel like your partner should know so they can be on that journey with you? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've never talked much about this, but I have told most of the guys I've dated at some point, just when it's felt right. I think, while I was still processing and healing, I think I told some of them early on because I felt like that was fair for them, because I don't want them to think that,
you want them to know like why you're hurting.
Yeah. And then at other, points in my life, I've told certain guys I've dated, and more so just to like, because things have been brought up, or that's like part of who I am. And, I want them to know me on a deep level. And, but I think it's a personal choice. And, things like this can also be used against you. And so, unfortunately, and so I think you just kind of have to follow your gut on that one.
Yeah. Do you have a specific lyric from Heaven that means the most to you? A specific line?
Yeah, I think so. Heaven is, I think my favorite line is the turning point, because all of the song is about wanting to go to heaven. Just take me,
Yeah.
And then at the last chorus, it changes to don't take me to heaven, because they have gotten the help they've needed. They've realized their purpose in life, and that it's better to stay. And so I think the don't take me is something that I tell myself often when I'm struggling, it's better to stay.
Yeah. So a lot of that song is about essentially not wanting to be around anymore. Right.
Yeah.
Was that something that has been with you for a while, those feelings?
Yeah, I think in my mid-20s, and I think when I started getting help and navigating my own emotions and feelings, I don't know. It's funny because as you get older, like I was saying, you think that things are going to get better and go away emotionally.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm more equipped to handle this.
Yeah.
But in a way, it gets harder because you get tired.
Yeah.
You're and like, I have felt this 10,000 times. Why am I still feeling this? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in a way, I feel like that's gotten, harder. And so I think it's really important to stay up on, the mental health. Mental health is a journey for everybody, no matter what you've been through. And I think it's just very important to talk about. And that's my biggest thing, is talking about it.
Yeah.
Because I think when we're in our own heads, it can be dangerous.
Yeah.
Depending on where you're at.
Yeah. Do you feel like your heart has gotten more tender over the years? Like, do you feel like it can like almost not withstand heartbreak as much? Or do you feel like you're better equipped because you've dealt with it more? I personally go back and forth.
I know. I do too. I'm like, I definitely feel more grounded in who I am and secure. And like, I know I bounce back quicker and I'm better at handling things, but part of me does feel more broken every time. Yeah. There's like a relationship that ends and I'm like, I physically cannot handle one more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I'm like, how is that so? I
think some of the pain for me when I've gone through a really bad breakup is, and it's funny, it's like, I'm not even thinking about the now. I'm thinking like, okay, this is so bad. I can't do this one more time. Like the next one has to work out.
Yes.
Or I'm going to perish by the wayside.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And like, it's hard because you don't have control over that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's not like you're like, okay, the next one I'll make sure that they love me back.
Yeah, because you've been doing that your whole life, hopefully, and for whatever reason it hasn't worked. And so it's like, you have no other option but to keep trying.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. For you personally, what do you think is the worst part about heartache? Not heartache, a broken heart from a relationship specifically.
I feel like relationships, when they end, it feels like a death because you really have to mourn the loss of that person and they're no longer in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just supposed to switch gears and snap back and keep going, even though like you actually give part of who you are to that person. And I think it's hard to get that back and to make it fit back where it was. You know what I mean? And to feel like you still have pieces that are out there with each person, and just to kind of reclaim who you are.
Yeah, it's like little parts of you die.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, especially if you're with somebody for a long time, your personality gets wrapped up in their life.
Yeah.
Like you start talking similarly, you have a million inside jokes, like every part of your life makes you think about them.
Everything.
It's like you drive past McDonald's, you're like, oh yeah, we used to get McFlurries sometimes.
Totally. Everything. And I think some people can handle that like a little better. Like me, I feel like I can't even be in the same city. I need because everything reminds me, and it's hard to process that, you know what I mean? And so it's just that it becomes your life.
Yeah. Do you have, not that you plan it, but do you feel like after a breakup you have a system of recovery that you go through?
None of them have really worked. So no, I do not have a formula of getting. In fact, I've stopped giving advice. I'm I don't know what to tell you. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I feel like dying and I don't know what to say, but it does get better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I hate it because it's honestly so cliche, but I really think the best advice is just that the pain will be there as long as it's there, but it will get better, and it will right now, I had a breakup about a year ago, and it's funny because a lot of times when I think about it, I think it happened 4 or 5 months ago.
Yes, totally.
But it was for sure a year. And I'm in such a better place than I was 6 months ago, but I still have some hurt from it, and there's still things that remind me of her. There's still things that I'm out with other girls and I'm she's not
right
so and so, but if 2 weeks after it happened I had known how peaceful I feel now, I'd be so grateful, because it felt like there's no way that peace could ever arrive.
Totally. Yeah.
Even though I'd been through it before, it just feels cataclysmic each time.
And I think part of that is beautiful, and it shows that you really loved.
Yeah.
And you really gave your all, because, not saying that people that don't feel that way haven't given their all, but there is a sense of realness. You loved that person, and of course it's going to be so hard to get over them because love is the strongest emotion. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I just think you can't really measure whether you've been dating a month or 4 years. Pain is pain. Yeah. And everyone feels it differently. Yeah. And I've kind of stopped asking people, oh, well, how long were you together? And I'm it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's
I was kind of embarrassed with my breakup because we only dated for a couple months.
Yeah.
And
sometimes those are the hardest.
But it was worse than probably any other breakup. Yeah. But I sometimes felt a little silly telling people how long. So I would just say oh, it wasn't that long. Yeah. It was super intense.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it was 6 months. You're it was almost a year. Yeah, you know what I mean?
I round up.
But yeah, that's something else that I've learned. It doesn't matter how long. Yeah. If just plain and simple, pain is pain.
Yeah. And some people you connect with so fast and so hard that it is more intense than a year-long relationship. Yeah. Yeah. And I think another reason why, you said, maybe it took me so long to get over because it was so real, but also for me, at least, it sounds like you're probably the same, but I don't seek escapism when it comes to my feelings. Yeah. And I mean, certainly I want to at times. And there's definitely times where I'm like, let me binge a show for 3 hours so I don't think about anything. But ultimately, I want to feel my feelings because that's the only way I can really address them because they're not going anywhere.
Nope. It's true.
And so, even I can binge a show for 3 hours and then I turn the TV off and my feelings come right back to the surface. Right, but sometimes when you're really going through it, it's nice to have 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's definitely balance in all things.
But it's not numbing myself.
Right.
Right. I'm just kind of putting a pause on
just
my life.
Taking a breather.
Yeah, like your necklace. It says
pause. Yes. So my mom got this for me and the girls in my family for Christmas because it's a kind of a mental health awareness, it's Brian Anthony, and I love his jewelry because they all have meaning.
Oh, cool.
And it's just reminding you to pause, take a breath, get your thoughts back together because it's hard, like what you're saying, not to just go numb yourself or put off this thought or just take 10 minutes out of the day and just breathe, and I need to be reminded of that, like heavily.
That's
so
cool.
I love it.
Yeah. In all this journey of heartbreak and healing and therapy and, getting over trauma from the past, where does God fit into your life in all of this?
Where doesn't he? Honestly, it's all God.
Yeah.
Like, I've had, experiences like I'm sure we all have where you're just lying on the bathroom floor crying and you're like, there's nothing left. And no human can, understand when you're all caught up in your feels, what I mean? Like, and there's just this peace that I have felt at some of my worst times that's very hard to explain, that I know is not from myself.
Right.
Because when I'm in that darkness, like, I'm not strong enough to pull myself out. I'm not strong enough to think of these, like, really positive, hopeful, happy thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's God, plain and simple.
Yeah, when you're in, like, the depths of a depressive episode, like, you don't have the ability to infuse light into your life or to even have a flicker of light. But yeah, in my experience, you can say what you want about whether you think God exists or not. And maybe to you that light, that flicker is something else and you don't view it as God like we do. But I can't say that's anything that I've conjured up. I can't say it's my own strength or my own ability. You know?
Totally. And I think that is when all of that comes into play, when you can't explain it. Like, there are no words, and it's a feeling, and it's very personal. And some people, like you're saying, believe it or don't believe it, and that's fine. I'm sure they have their there's certain things that bring them out of darkness, and that's amazing. But yeah, for me, I do know that it's God, and it's just so, there's no telling me otherwise.
Yeah.
And I love that.
That's cool. Yeah. You know what I realized the other day, as a man that's 6'3", I just don't fit that well laying down on a bathroom floor.
Well, lucky you, because there's something about it where it's just like, this is rock bottom, man.
yeah. I have to literally be in the fetal position to fit.
Well, that's usually what you're in, so you should.
That's true.
I don't want you to try it for these reasons, but maybe when you get home, you should just try it.
Yeah.
Just see how it feels.
Yeah. Okay.
See if you can fit.
Okay. Yeah, our bathroom isn't the biggest. We got the tub and then the door, and if I want to be fully stretched out, it's not.
Yeah, it's true.
But That's funny.
Thank goodness for the fetal position,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Tell me a little bit about your experience on The Bachelor Listen to Your Heart. So I didn't even know this was a show.
Yeah. It was just a spinoff that they
Yeah.
did during COVID. And
Uh-huh.
so I think a lot of people knew about it and a lot of people didn't.
Mhm.
And we actually finished filming 2 weeks before the lockdown.
Oh, okay.
And it was just a crazy time because I remember seeing on the news, the last thing I saw on the news before I was cut off from the world for about a month, because you don't have any contact with the outside world, was this new virus that had just entered the U.S. and like one person.
So you don't have your phones or anything?
Mm-mm.
They like take your phones?
Yes.
Is that kind of a crazy thing?
It is freaking insane. Like, I think that's the one thing, like, my parents, they're like, you can't do that to us ever again. You just can't. Sorry. If you have another opportunity, you're not doing it.
How long was it?
It was about a month.
A month without a phone?
Yes.
Wow.
No talking to my family.
Yeah.
No watching the news, like, cut off.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it was really amazing. You know what I mean? Because there are, camps that you can go to for therapy where you don't have a phone.
Right.
And as hard as that is, like, it's so needed, because who isn't addicted to their phone in some way or another?
Yeah.
And just having it constantly take up space in your mind of what's on your phone if you're not on your phone, and there's so much with that. So yeah, honestly, it was the best time of my life, the best experience I've ever had. It's my favorite thing I've ever done.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I loved it.
So I know the premise of the show, they're kind of trying to like form relationships like through the power of music and all that stuff. And it looked like you kind of ended up dating a guy from it.
I did.
Or was that kind of what the show wanted and you kind of put out that image? Or did you guys actually kind of fall for each other?
We did. I think, when you're in an environment like that, it's cool because I don't feel like, first of all, I don't know that we ever would have met. I don't know that we would have really pursued each other. And so it's so cool to be in that environment and be like, I see this side of you that maybe I wouldn't have seen in, the world of realness, with access to whatever we have. And yeah, so we ended up winning the show together. And then we dated for about a year afterward.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a while, I think, for some Bachelor couples.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Was everyone like, when you could kind of go public with it, was everyone like, come on, like, are you guys really dating?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think 50, maybe even 60% doesn't believe it. And then 40% is like, oh,
Yeah.
And Bachelor Nation is very like, they are quite the fans / audience, and they're very opinionated. And so there were definitely both sides of that,
Yeah. So what was, do you feel like when you came out of that sort of 2-month isolation, do you feel like you had like a new relationship with your phone?
Yeah, honestly, the biggest thing has been with social media. I don't feel like I've ever been the same. I think it was a lot at once.
Yeah, because I'm sure, when you got back, especially, you probably had a million notifications.
Yeah.
And now you've probably grown significantly on your platforms.
Yeah.
And you're like probably just overwhelmed, right?
I was very overwhelmed. Yeah. And I think that there's a part of me that still is, like, that just hasn't gone away, that feeling of just I don't know. But it was such a good thing. And it's a good overwhelming feeling. You know what I mean? But I'm such a people person and I care so much about people's feelings that if I don't respond to a message, I feel horrible.
Right.
But I don't do it because there's some sort of mental block. And like, I don't know if it's my ADHD or anxiety or whatever it is, but it's something. And it's not my natural way. And so that's actually something I'm still trying to figure out.
Yeah.
It keeps me up at night, like, it's a big thing to me, but And I think I'm an all or nothing person with responses. So I'm like, well, if I didn't respond to these 200 people, I can't just pick 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's such an interesting balance. Like, as the podcast has started to grow a little bit, like, I'm starting to get more just messages from strangers, you know? And I try to respond to as many as I can, right? But I think the tricky part is some want to, like, be pen pals almost. You know, they don't want to just have a quick back and forth.
Right.
Thanks, I love your stuff. They want to connect and they want to be friends.
Yeah.
And it's like with some people, maybe, but you ultimately just don't have time.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that's the thing is time is so limited. And I want to connect with them, but I think it's also that mental energy where I'm like, if I'm going to respond, I'm going to respond, you know? And, and so, yeah, you get it. It's a constant, you know, balance.
And I'm not even an attractive girl. I can't imagine what it would feel like.
Oh, come on. I don't know. I've seen some pretty aggressive girls.
You know what? There's some aggressive girls out there.
The world's changing.
But it's nowhere near like the shamelessness of men.
I have so much respect for men.
Do you? Great.
I do and I don't. Yeah. So let's not get too ahead of ourselves.
Okay, let's not get carried away.
But like just messaging a girl, not knowing her relationship status, like what? Rejection is so hard.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the hardest things that we have to go through.
I think as a man, you almost expect rejection.
Yeah. Yeah, can you just go into that a little bit? Because I'm just like, I don't know how I would do it.
So I've shifted my stance on this a little bit as I've gotten older and had more experience. But like if I am just like shooting my shot in a DM or something, I go in assuming she's not available.
Okay.
Right? Assuming she's probably seeing somebody. I do my due diligence, make sure there's no obvious boyfriend. But I also know that's the easiest excuse if she's not interested, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, sorry, I'm kind of talking to somebody, right? But I just view it as I've got nothing to lose because I had nothing going with her before. So if she rejects me, I'm at the same spot I was before. I'm not any worse off. I can take it personally and be like, oh, she's not into me because of this or this or this, and like I could never get a girl like that, or, you know, I could spiral. But ultimately, it's like I've had successes from it, so I know it's almost a numbers game. It's like her response almost has little to do with me, you know? And so I'm happy to shoot my shot and get rejected. I don't care.
Well, that's an amazing way to look at it. Yeah. And I'm sure that's taken a little bit of mental work, and kind of what you said about that spiraling thing. I think you kind of learn how to catch yourself from spiraling after you've done it so many times. Like you just know it's not going to get you anywhere. Yeah. You know?
And I've also realized like, it's funny. It's been an interesting like practice with my roommate. Like we often have similar taste in girls, right? We tend to like be interested in the same girl often, but
so hard.
But it's honestly not, because we have such a good relationship, and so it never becomes an issue. But what we've found is we're different enough that usually a girl just is more interested in one than the other.
Yeah.
And it has nothing, like, it's not a slight on either one of us. And so we view it as such. We're like, well, we can both shoot our shot probably, because she'll probably end up either liking you or liking me.
Yeah.
You know, or neither. You know, but it's rarely, if ever, both, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that's another thing you have to look at when you're a guy approaching a girl, is like, you might be you might be a catch, but you just might not be her type. And especially if she's like a really high value girl, like she's got her options. And so if you're not her type, you're probably never going to be, you know, like you can be the sweetest guy, you can buy her flowers, you can try to woo her, but if you're not her type, there's a million guys that are her type.
Right.
You know?
I think that that's also kind of like, it's true. If you're not someone's type, you're not someone's type.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's still difficult. I feel like, because you're like, but why?
Yeah, I
like,
should
why
be.
am I not?
Well, and sometimes you're like, I should be everyone's type.
Exactly. You're like, because there's a reason you're not their type.
Yeah.
And so it's hard not to, kind of obsess over that, I think, sometimes. So I really respect that approach.
Yeah. I mean, and that to me, that's easier than approaching a girl like in public, which I'll do. But that rejection hurts more when it's in person.
Yeah.
But to be fair, usually that rejection is, they just say they're dating somebody or they come up with some excuse. And so to me, again, I try not to think like, is she telling me the truth? Like, is she really dating somebody? I'm like, well, she said what she said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all you have.
Yeah. But I've found that I feel worse if I really want to go talk to a girl and I just talk myself out of it.
Yeah. That's a really, really valid point.
Yeah.
Because just, if that's what it's going to take to get you to just do it, because you don't know if you're going to see that person ever again. I mean, a lot of times you never will. So if you don't take that shot, you'll never know.
And like, if I'm going to give like dating advice to guys, like that's also the best way to get just practice. Like if you get rejected a million times, all of a sudden it's not so bad.
Yeah.
But if you never go out on a limb, the thought of trying to get a girl's number is horrifying, But if you're like, yeah, dude, 2 girls rejected me yesterday, big deal. Like I'm due for a win.
Someone has to say yes.
Yeah.
Which I feel like you're being humble, because I think that you're wonderful, and I think there's more yeses in there than you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? There's some yeses sprinkled in there, but here's what I've gotten good at. I think I've gotten good at. I can pretty much go get me a phone number.
Yeah.
Right. But it's not like I said, I just might not be their type. But I think I can get over like the fear of the approach. But yeah, and even a lot of times maybe I am a girl's type, but there's just still no click. The personality click isn't there. And so you can't take everything so personal. Yeah. But it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's something that is just, dating is just, it's like a battlefield, and we have to keep doing it.
Will you ever slide into a guy's DM?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm thinking back.
Is it pretty subtle though? You'll like comment on a story or something, or will you go in guns blazing?
I'm definitely more of a traditional type, but I think dating has changed so much that I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
And I think, you just, like we're saying, you don't know if you're going to see them again. You don't know. I mean, social media, yeah, because if you follow them, you're always going to see them. But more so just, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So may as well just do it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Well, and I think for a girl, it's easy because you can make just the slightest move. And if the guy's interested, he'll probably do something, right? Like even just following a guy.
Right. Exactly.
If a cute girl follows me, I'm not just like, oh, cool. I'm going to message her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally. I think that you're exactly right. And it is, I think it's still easier for girls.
Yeah.
They don't have to be as straightforward. But I do know some guys that's the only way in.
Yeah.
So it just depends on the personality you're dealing with.
Yeah, totally. I have a couple quotes I want to read to you and just get your thoughts on them.
Okay.
This first one I love because this is about artists. It's by James Baldwin. He's a famous novelist, and he said, "The role of the artist is exactly the same role of the lover. If I love you, I have to make you conscious of things you don't see."
Oh. That is, can you read that one more time?
Yeah. The role of the artist is exactly the same role of the lover. If I love you, I have to make you conscious of things you don't see. Do you think that's true?
That is that's deep. I haven't heard that before.
Yeah.
Wow. What's your take on what that means to you?
Yeah, for me, we'll start with, the artist is the same role as a lover, which is kind of a crazy statement. But I think anytime you're producing art, you're kind of producing love.
Yeah.
Like you want your art to emanate love. You want your art to show love. You want your art to express love. And you want the relationship between artist and consumer to be one of love, right? No matter what your message is, you want, because to me, love is connection. It's feeling like you see each other. And so, yeah, I think, when I'm thinking about my art as a writer, like I want people to read my words and feel love and feel loved and feel seen. And so, and I think it's true as a lover, when you love somebody, whether it's a friend, a significant other, your mom, I think you have a responsibility to make them conscious of things they don't see, whether it's just a little blind spot they have, or whether it's showing them how beautiful they are when they don't realize it, or how wonderful and unique they are without them realizing it. So yeah, I think the artist and the lover are kind of one and the same.
Yeah. That is so, I'm sorry. I'm just thinking about that. I just find I think there's a lot of different thoughts and feelings that's, made me think of. And one was in my songwriting class. The instructor the biggest thing that stuck with me in that whole class was nobody wants to be told how to feel. And I love that. And I've kind of approached writing and music differently because of that statement. And I think, as I said earlier, for me, my perspective of music is I can always say it better through song and make people feel something that they haven't felt before, in a way that's just so beautiful. And for me, I love that about music, because I have gotten comments from people saying, I don't even know what I'm feeling, but I needed this. And it's just been a release. And I feel like now I can do this, or now I see myself as this way. And that's how I know I've done my job,
Yeah.
And that's my favorite part, because it's for, if you're, publishing, if you're, releasing your art into the world, it really is for them, as the consumer. You write for yourself and you're feeling it. It's coming from somewhere, but you're not going to put it out there unless you really want people to hear it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Otherwise you would just closet it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I love that. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. And that's, what's crazy about music is there's 10 million songs about heartbreak.
Yeah.
Right. But you'll hear one and you'll be like, that's what I'm going through specifically.
Yeah.
And because heartbreaks are so unique, each one, but I remember I was with this last breakup, she was out of town when we kind of ended things. And so 2 weeks later we had an in-person, let's really drag this out and no, not drag it out, but I just, wanted some peace and wanted to get into everything. But I was visiting some family. And so I had a 4-hour drive to her house to think about everything I was going to say.
Wow.
And that was such a specific emotion. And I remember just listening to this album and feeling how does this guy know like that I'm on this drive.
Yeah.
And that like I'm going to like the battlefield and like
He's prepping me for this. How does he know?
Yeah, it was crazy. And now I hear those songs and it reminds me of that time, but also I'm not in that state anymore.
Yeah.
So violently, at least. And so the song has different connotations as you grow and as you mature, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. I think that there's space for everybody. I think, at least for me as an artist, a lot of times it's hard to, push to be seen, to get my songs out there, because I'm like, this is nothing new. It's all been said, just in different ways, all that. But like what you're saying, different things hit you at different times, and there's space for everybody, and that's part of our role as existing, is taking our talents and abilities and trying to help people for good, and you never know who's listening, who's watching, who's going to be changed from something that you just put out there,
Yeah, I love that. Okay, I have one more for you.
Okay.
This one, it's funny. So I like put this on my story on Instagram a while ago, and I wrote a little note under it, and I said, I read this the other day and it kind of kicked me in the chin, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. So
all right, I'm ready to be kicked in the chin.
Yeah, it's by Louise Gluck.
Okay.
And it says, from the beginning of time in childhood, I thought that pain meant I was not loved. It meant I loved.
Pain meant I was not. Oh. Yeah.
So I thought that pain meant I was not loved. It actually meant that I did love.
Wow. I feel kicked in the chin for sure. Yeah. Can I ask you again kind of where your thoughts went with that?
Yeah, I think I immediately went to heartbreak. Like, I had a pretty good childhood, didn't have any specific trauma that I could think of, but yeah, I think with heartache, you feel like, oh, I'm feeling pain because I'm not loved. But in reality, you're feeling such pain because you loved so hard, and whether that was, reciprocated or not, and sometimes it was, but it just ended, But I think the thing to take from this is that usually the pain isn't because, it's not because of a lack of love, it's because of love. Yeah. And I think when you realize that, there's some beauty in the pain.
Honestly, you should be a therapist, because one of my therapists did say, like, you need to embrace pain, and it's a part of who you are, and it is beautiful, and it is so connected to love. And that's been hard for me.
Yeah. That's such a hard thing, like, embrace pain.
I don't want to do that. Like, who wants that?
Yeah.
But you nailed it, and it's just one of those things, it's like, the sooner you figure it out, if you ever truly figure that out, the better off you'll be, and I think it does. It shows resilience, you know what I mean? And just, it's so related to love, you know?
Yeah. And
I always see it so separately, but that puts it so perfectly. I need to remind myself. That. You'll need to send me that.
Yeah. I also think it's important. Like, I think embracing your pain is important, but I think it's important to not, like, have your whole life defined by pain.
Yes.
But just to realize that it comes and goes, and it's just part of it. And it doesn't need to be your whole narrative of, like, I've been through this and I've been through this and I'm a victim of this, I'm a victim of this. But rather, this happened, it was horrible. This happened, it was horrible. This happened, it was great. This happened, it was amazing. And just realize that life is just this wild cornucopia of all that stuff and all the emotions. And just like you can define your life by happiness or joy, that's not really a full picture either.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
one of my mentors that he's a good friend of mine. He's actually my bishop, my ecclesiastical leader. We were talking about how, you know how a lot of times people will be like, so how are you doing on a scale of 1 to 10? You know, which I hate that question.
I know.
But he said, he's like, you know those kind of people that always are like, oh, I'm a 10. Or, you know, or like they'll be like, I'm always a 9.
Always.
You know? And he said to me something really profound. He's like, if you're always a 9, you should practice more empathy. And I thought that was interesting because you can have a pretty, like, some people honestly have just really amazing lives.
Yeah.
And, you know, all their loved ones only die when they're old, and they have a career that's always flourishing. Like, some people have easier lives, but to assume that everyone else around you is having an equally breezy life is not very sensitive and not very loving, I don't think. So I think when you meet people where they are, like if somebody is going through something, they don't want to see you at a 9.
Right.
Like, and it doesn't mean you need to be sad too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think when you feel other people's pain, it kind of takes you down a little bit. But I think it's important to feel other people's pain with them.
Totally. I mean, I kind of feel like that's what life is, you know, and it's just really hard to do it by yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and I think empathy is huge, and what he said was spot on. Because sometimes it just makes the person feel worse. You know, sometimes you just need to kind of bring yourself to their level and be like, I see you, I feel you, I hear you, and kind of let them process that. And then you can use, you know, your 9 out of 10-ness to, you know, help them reach a higher number, you know? And that would be amazing, you know, if you could use it for that. But yeah, I'm
fine living my whole life as like a 6 or 7. You know, because it always goes up and down.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we get obsessed with like, I feel like I'm never at an 8 or 9. Like, what's my problem? I must be depressed. And it's like, if you look at your day, like if you really break down every moment of your day, it's all over the place usually. And so, yeah, you can give yourself an average score and then average it out through your weeks and your years and your life. But it's like, your days are full of 1s and 2s and 8s and 9s. And honestly, like little moments of 9s or 10s are really rare and really fleeting. And, you know, I think most of your day, you're kind of cruising at a 5.
Yeah. I feel like it would be a little abnormal, you know, to constantly be a 10.
Yeah, because 10 is ridiculous.
It's like
10 is like euphoria. And it's bliss. It's nirvana. It doesn't last. And I think the goal is to, you know, seek things that bring you such incredible joy. But yeah, I think you got to find a way to be really happy at like a 6.
I think that's awesome. And, you know, it's funny you bring that up because not that long ago, I was asking family members, friends, I'm like, how would you rate your happiness?
Yeah.
1 to 10. And it was a hard question for people to answer. And I was like, a lot of the numbers were pretty low. And I was like, this is kind of sad.
Yeah.
You know? But like what you're saying, again, if it was a 10, I feel like that's just as concerning as a 1.
Yeah.
And I think it's all about that balance, you know? And I love what you said about depending on the time of day, it changes.
Yeah.
You know, and it's about, you know, the end of the day and what you take from it and where you go and that overall peace that you're constantly trying to find and balance.
Yeah. And I wish it was the opposite, but I tend to, like, if I look at my day as a whole, I tend to remember the negative things more, right?
Totally.
But sometimes, like when I'm journaling or writing down things in like this gratitude notebook I have, it's like the majority of my day is usually good if I really look at every little thing that happened, but the negative things tend to stick out.
Yes.
And they tend to like be the thorn in my side when I'm like, dude, what's my problem? I had so many awesome things happen, you know? And it's funny. So I do this thing where when I read books, I will often write in the margins just little thoughts I have, almost as like a little journal. And I was rereading this book the other day, and I saw this. The only line I put, I thought it was really interesting. It was like the writer was talking about the simple pleasures of like food and sunlight. And I wrote in the margins, if I have nothing else good in my life, I always have two amazing gifts, food and the sun.
I love that.
Yeah. And it's just a cool little simple exercise of gratitude and reminder that like you always have some gifts.
Always.
You know?
Just existing.
Yeah.
And
but I love to focus on the things I don't have. I'm really good at it.
Well, join the club.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? That it's so much easier to remember and focus on the bad?
I think that's tied in with our inability to be present, because when you're not being present, you're constantly worried about the future and what you don't have, or even the past. You're worried about what hurt you. You're worried about what you thought you deserved and you didn't get. But I think when you're present, you're just feeling what you're feeling, and you're seeing things you're grateful for. You're seeing the beauty in front of you. But yeah, when you're not present, it's just too easy to worry about the future and to fixate on the negative. I don't know.
Yeah. And that's, it's talked about a lot, like how insanely hard it is to focus on the present. Yeah. And there's a reason for that. Yeah. It's just not easy, because naturally we're thinking of what we aren't. Like, and it doesn't matter what we've accomplished. It's about what can I accomplish in the future. And I think, I feel like it's easy to spot someone who is living in the present. They just bring this feel to them that's so contagious. Yeah. And you're like, how are you like this? Yeah. And then you're like, they are just enjoying life. Yeah. And that's because it takes away the stress and the fear. And I think it's really easy to be controlled by those two things, Yeah. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, I think a great way to be more present is to get a better relationship with this, And I've found that I am really enjoying activities where I can't have my phone, or where I need to like turn it on do not disturb. Like, honestly, I love that about podcasting. It's like, if nothing else during the day, I got 2 hours where I cannot be disturbed. It's amazing. And I have no reason to look at my phone because I'm just here with you. Yeah. But there's so many activities during the day where I'm like, well, I should probably check my phone in case someone amazing texted me and wants to tell me they love me. Yes. Okay. It's not to, I hope I'm not cutting you off, but the worst thing in the world is like when you get off an airplane and you turn it off airplane mode and there's nothing. Like, that's
hopefully it's a short flight. If it's a long flight, that's tough.
I know. I honestly,
you know what I like to do? I like to text 1 million people before I go on a flight.
Take it off. Yeah. I saw something that said the person who cares about you most, or no, the person you care about most is the one that you're texting that you're taking off. And I'm like, yep, my mom and my mom. Yeah. And it's just what it comes down to.
Yeah. But yeah, I think if you can, because a lot of us, like, we're attached to our phone like we have to for work or whatever, your social life. But if you can find moments throughout the day where you're like, let me throw my phone across the room and go do something for 15 minutes even, like, I think it's really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to do that. Yeah. Because I'm not great at meditating, and that's something I've been really wanting to work on. And a big part of meditating is obviously not having your phone. But even just doing it and then seeing if you can do maybe a minute more, like each time, it just takes back, like you get your control back of your life. You know what I mean?
Well, my buddy the other day, I don't think he always does this, but sometimes we'll go to church together and he'll just leave his phone in the car.
I love that.
And I'm like, I don't know if I have that strength yet. But
I've never been able to do it, but I've had friends that have, and I'm
But
like,
I mean, how much more attentive and present would I be?
100%.
And I don't super need my phone.
Yeah,
I
know.
Yeah.
It's like I could bring a piece of paper and a pen, and like actually write thoughts down. And, And I think it's something that's hard, but it's doable,
Yeah. Okay, a couple more questions and we'll wrap up. Okay, this is an interesting question I ask people sometimes. If you could, like, if future Bree 5-10 years down the road could come and give you advice right now, what do you think she would say to you?
Don't freaking worry.
Yeah.
Like, live in the present.
Yeah.
Stop worrying about what isn't, about what is.
Yeah.
And just be free.
Yeah.
And
just live. Yeah. That's cool. Mm-hmm. Good for Bree for telling Bree that.
Thank you, Bree. I'm going to really take that to heart and just try and live,
Yeah. Okay, so if we could kind of switch roles and you're the podcaster for a second, what's a question you would ask me?
Well, if I was the podcaster, I'd probably ask you like 40 questions.
Okay.
Because every question you're asking me, I'm like, but like I want to know you too. And like,
but you can ask a couple questions if you want, or sub questions.
I do. I would love to know. You've probably said it on past episodes, but I would love to know what you also would tell yourself.
Oh, an older me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually haven't, I don't think. Okay. Let's see. I would probably, it's like, I don't want to steal yours, but yours is so good, but I would probably say kind of like, hey man, you end up really, really happy.
That's really sweet.
Like you're worried about your happiness so much, and as you should be, but it all ends up good. And if it doesn't end up good, it's not done yet. So
I love that.
Yeah, I think, hopefully future me has reached that spot. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I'm really happy right now in a lot of ways, and fulfilled in a lot of ways. But yeah, I think we worry so much about the end goal and the happily ever after, and especially as a single person, mm-hmm. I think you think a lot about who am I going to end up with, and will it be the right person, and will I have this beautiful family that I've always dreamed about, and will I have the kind of love that I think I deserve and that I think I'm capable of? But I think that I will, and I think I'll end up extremely happy. Mm-hmm. But I think I have to remind myself sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah.
And going off of that, it's not a thought I want to have, but that any of us want to have. But when the thought creeps in of, but what if I do die alone? Mm-hmm. What if I never find this? What if I never have that? Like, what if? Like, what do you tell yourself to keep having that hope?
Yeah.
Do you just tell yourself like it's gonna happen?
I've grappled with that question a lot. I think, okay, here's my answer, and it's a little dark.
Love it.
But I also think it's a little light. So I think I talked about this in a previous episode, but I think I've gotten to a point where I want to be happy and satisfied with my life, even if all the things I want don't happen, And so, yeah, that's a hard truth to approach. But I want to live a life where, you know what, if I never get married, if I never have kids, if I never am as successful as I want to with my art, with my career, like, will my life be worthless? Will it be without purpose? Like, I don't think so. And I can't live that way, you know? And I do think it'll all work out, right? But I want to live in a way that my happiness is not dependent on future outcomes, you know? And also, like, I might meet the love of my life and they might die of cancer 3 years later. And I can't say for me to be ultimately happy and ultimately satisfied, I need to have a long and beautiful marriage. Maybe all I ever get is a couple of years, right? And I hope to the high heavens I get more than that. Especially, you know, when you get married a little later in life, you're like, man, I want it all. I want the long marriage and I want, you know, kids quick, but it's like, what if we struggle with fertility, you know?
Yeah.
And there's a million things that aren't promised. And so I think it's healthy to consider that maybe you can be happy without all the things you've ever dreamt of. Yeah.
I love that. I identify with like everything you
Yeah.
said. And something I've really been thinking a lot about is, first of all, grass is always greener. And even if you get what you always wanted, how do you know that that's better than now? Because you don't know what that entails, because there's no way of knowing. And then I think just like success and how we measure it. Something that's hard for me as an artist is people will always look at me as she never made it because she's not Taylor Swift.
Right.
She doesn't have that level of, you know, fame. She hasn't done a world tour. I could list 400 things that I haven't done. And, you know, people will constantly be like, one of these days, like, I know you're going to make it. I know you are. And I'm like, I am making it. I have made it.
Right.
And I've been trying to rephrase that to where I don't sound defensive. I don't sound like, you know, there's a chip on my shoulder, because who doesn't want to be the most successful person in what they love and do? But that's been something that's hard. Like, I've really had to work on that because, as you know, just being, you know, doing what we do, everyone measures success differently.
Yeah.
And like, for me, the show was like my moment.
Yeah.
I just would never trade that for anything. And I'm like, in that moment, I was like, I made it, you know? But because it's been 4 years and I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, people can see this or that, I haven't made it.
Right.
And I'm, you know, and so I think
it's a moving target.
It is, yeah. And I'm like, but how do you measure success? Like, how do you know when you've made it, you know?
Yeah, do you get a certificate in the mail that says you've
exactly.
made it?
I'm just like, and so it's taken a lot of self-talk. And I think that goes with being a single woman in my 30s in today's age. And it can apply to anything and everything. You have one kid, well, why don't you have 4 kids? You know, and I think we just have to like remind ourselves we are living our lives. We have made it by doing it. Yeah. By continuing to grow and do what we love and reach more people for good and everything. But yeah, I don't know. I just think it's important to remind ourselves and not let society get in our heads. Yeah. Because a lot of people, they don't mean it like, you know, in a negative way.
But a lot of them are non-creatives, right? And I think, you know, people are just curious and they want to be like, well, are you making money off your music or your shows? Are you getting residuals? Or
because that's a level of success.
Yeah, and and to you in your head, you're like, well, who cares? Like, I'm doing what I love and I'm spreading my art. Like that's my success. Right. You know.
And you're like, it's okay if that's enough for me. Like, can it be enough for you? Yeah. You know what I mean? And it just reminds me every time, you know, people just think differently and they measure it differently, and that's okay. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. Well, Bree, you're awesome.
You're awesome. This was so fun.
Yeah, I'm glad you came. Where can people find your music? What's the easiest way?
Yes.
Just Bree Stauss?
Yeah, just my name, Bree Stauss. It's the same on every platform. So you can just type that in and you'll find some stuff.
And Heaven just came out, right? Like a week ago or so?
Yep, about a week. Yeah. Yeah, about a week ago.
Awesome. Well, go listen to Heaven. We talked about its lyrics a lot, so go listen.
Yeah, I'd love to know.
Yeah,
people's thoughts on it.
And if people, can you like go and rewatch your Bachelor episodes? Are they out there somewhere?
They are. I actually was in the process of looking it up the other day and got distracted. Go figure. And I want to say it's on Hulu. I'm gonna have to look that up, but I know it's somewhere.
Yeah. So it's Bachelor Listen to Your Heart.
Yes.
Okay. What season is it?
That's it. It's just The Bachelor Presents Listen to Your Heart because it was a one-time spinoff.
Cool. Okay, cool. So season 1.
Yep.
Awesome.
So that's all there is. I think there's like 6 episodes. So.
Okay, awesome. Well, appreciate you being here and appreciate you listening. Bye.